This is Reynolds Podcast, The Creative Mindset.
Hi everyone, welcome to The Creative Mindset, a podcast about what the future holds at the intersection of creativity and technology. I'm Ray Namoto, the founding partner of Ironco, a global innovation firm based in New York, Tokyo, and Singapore. Art was my very first love when it came to subject matters that I was interested in when I was young. From the very early days in kindergarten all the way to college, I was deeply interested in art, so I chose it as my academic study at the university. When I was in college, I decided to mix my artistic interest with emerging technologies, and that's what led me to a career that I have at the intersection of creativity and technology. Andrew Zolty, known professionally as BREAFAST, is someone who does this for a living, but as an artist. We've known each other since our 20s as we were building our respective careers in the same industry, but he decided to pursue pure art by making a business out of it. He started to focus on it full-time around 2008 during the financial crisis. Now an internationally acclaimed artist, BREAFAST is a data and kinetic artist whose work centers on transforming real-time data from the natural world into digitally controlled kinetic artworks that tell stories. He has a studio in Brooklyn with around 15 engineers to invent and build kinetic sculptures for museums, corporations, and private collectors around the world. He considers himself the lead singer and songwriter of the band he leads called BREAFAST. Today's conversation is an in-depth introspection of pursuing a creative life. We chronicle how he transitioned from being a commercial designer to a pure artist, how he built his practice as an art practitioner and a business owner, how he protects his intellectual property, his vision, and the goal as an artist, and finally, a very yet profound piece of advice for anyone wishing to pursue a creative life. So, let's get started. So, Zolty, good to see you, man.
Hey, happy to be here.
It's been ages. All right, so let's get into the meat of the conversation. As I said, I want to break this up into two sections. One is about your career trajectory and the transition that you've made from a designer, developer to an artist. And you touched upon your turning point when you were, this was in, like you were physically living in London at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this Baker tweet that you did in 2007 or 8-ish. And just to trace back our collective memory, when I first met you, I couldn't quite pinpoint the exact moment when we met or where we met. But you were definitely working at a creative digital agency. I don't think it was Poke. It may have been, I was looking at your LinkedIn just to see like, where was Zolty when we first met? And it may have been agency.com when you were at agency.com.
That's what I was going to say. I think so.
Yeah.
Might have been.
And this is like 20 years ago, maybe?
Oh, God, that hurts to say. Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yes, that hurts to say.
I think it's like 05, 06, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
04.
Yeah. And then we would see each other at different events and social events, professional events, once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And my memory is that we didn't see each other for several years, like maybe about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And then you had your studio. So sounds for me, there is a blank space in time.
Yeah.
And, I knew Zolty as developer/designer at these core agencies, creative digital agencies. And then next thing I knew, Zolty's an artist, full-time artist. So paint me a picture of what that transition was like. You mentioned about that little turning point that we had, but that you had. But I'm sure there was a lot in between and after that.
Yeah, I'll do my best to keep it succinct. Yeah. I mean, what I remember, so go ahead, I can specifically remember, I don't know what I was concepting at the time, but being at agency.com and coming upon, there are two, I don't know what they would want to be called, art collectives, something. There's two of them that I came upon in the early 2000s, which was Art plus Com, which many people don't know, but they know their work. They're based out of Germany. I can't remember exactly which city. And honestly, I'm not even sure what they're up to. I haven't checked in a while, but what they're known most for are these sort of kinetic rain. They've been massively copied, and every time I see it, it kills me. But like, they were doing these sort of stainless steel balls for like a BMW museum way back when. You remember
exactly
that?
what you're talking about. Yes, I remember that.
So like, and then they've done a kinetic rain one that's in, I think, the Singapore airport and stuff like that. So like, I found them, and I found another collective called Random International out of London, who had at the time, way back when, these tiny little mirrors that kind of had a personality. They were on the ground. They kind of look up at you. They're kind of Pixar lamp-esque. Anyhow, I remember coming upon them during some sort of research project, and it just sort of opening my eyes and just being like, oh, all this digital stuff, all these like, all this concepting and creativity, like something just screamed at me with that. And so that's when I started trying to get out of the screen and really out into the real world with my concepting. So even at agency.com, I started pitching more different kind of ideas that that weren't trapped on the screen. And I don't think any of them really happened. And then I moved over to Poke, which was like the digital arm of Mother. And that was in New York. And I was starting to learn basic electronics. And again, still trying to push concepts that were maybe a little bit outside the norm. But it was when I switched over to Poke in London that I sort of sunk my teeth in and was really spending a lot of time learning electronics and things of that sort. And thus, when Baker Tweet happened, it was amazing. It kind of just blew up. It did the viral thing back in the day and just like went everywhere. And that combined with my wife and I had moved to London, but we hadn't sold. We had an apartment in New York that we hadn't sold, with the idea that just in case we didn't like London, we'd come back. And the problem was, this was 2007, 2008. And then the market crashed, and it was a co-op in New York, and they said you can rent it for 1 year, the co-op board. And what happened was I couldn't sell it. I couldn't sell it because the market was such a mess. And so all of a sudden we were loving London, but we had no choice. We had to move back. And so that is when I was like, what am I going to do? Like I had this Baker Tweet moment. I started seeing what I wanted to do. I couldn't find anywhere that I wanted to work that felt right or that would let me do that. And that's when I started talking to one of the guys, engineer called Matthias Gunnerus, that was also working at Poke, that he helped me with the Baker Tweet piece, kind of more from the hardcore software side. And I went to him and I was like, what do you think about doing more of this? And do you want to move to New York? And so that's where BREAFAST sort of was born. And then the one thing I also knew in the back of my head is I would never do this without some kind of like business person, because I didn't trust myself. So I reached out actually to a guy that used to be in my band that I'd known for years, who was over kind of leading software at Goldman Sachs, kind of a radically different background. So I brought him in as well. And so I started the studio, and at that point for the next many years, it was, the best way I can describe it was a master's degree in learning all of the electronics, industrial design. And for years, I mean, really for almost a decade, it was just trying to learn how to do this, do it well for anyone that would give us money. It wasn't being an artist at all. It was really just like, how do I scratch this itch? How do we create crazy things? And you might remember, I mean, we did things all over the map that were still kind of in advertising world, but I would say for every advertising or every paid commission, we would then balance it with like trying to make something that was our own, like something that just on our own terms. And then to try and wrap this story up, so I mean, in the late, I don't know, 2016-ish, somewhere around there is when, I really started seeing like, where is all this going? Like, I don't want to just be this sort of services company. It didn't feel right. And the things that I always came up with on my own were the best things in my mind. And so that's when the decision was made, like, what if we go after the art world? And so it's essentially been in evolution since then, because the other part is that it's so costly to make this kind of work, that finding the business model that made sense was very difficult. And the art world kind of became like, when we did the Venn diagram of, where can you kind of name your prices that might not match, if you go down a product route, everyone expects it to be cost effective, efficient, but that's not really the way we want to do things. And so, so it's been since, the 2015, 2016 is when really went all in on the art world. And then, man, it's evolved even more since, but I'll shut up because I'll go on forever.
Yeah. So the financial market crash had a bit of an impact on your decision. You kind of had to move back because you couldn't sell your place, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, you didn't really find any place that you wanted to work for when you moved back to New York City.
Yeah, I felt like I was getting like, I saw the writing was on the wall for me that like, okay, there's something in this physical digital world, which like at the time, like this is the early days, like the freaking iPhone had only been out like a year.
Right.
So like, I mean, people were getting excited about social media. No one was talking about like hardware. And so I just couldn't find, to start a gig anywhere and like say, that's what I want to do would not have made sense to anyone. So yeah.
What was the first paid gig as BREAFAST?
It was, I think the notable one, I'll put it that way, because we had like one little dinky thing that's not worth talking about. But so the whole idea was coming off the back of Baker Tweet. It was this idea of if you build it, they will come. So the first thing I ever conceived was a good friend of mine was riding her bike. She was planning to ride her bike across the country. And so what I decided to do is like, what if, this is kind of funny to talk about today. At the time, it was, what if we gave the bike an AI? This is 2009. 2009. We were like, what if we gave the bike an AI and the bike could share its experience of going across the country? This is not the paid gig. I'll get to that. But so we created this like hardware that could go on the bike, that the battery could last a really long time. And it would take all the bumps and shocks and temperature. It would take it was just a ton of sensors. And then it would go up into, a very rudimentary AI that would then kind of write tweets, and it would sort of post those tweets out from the bike's perspective, and you could follow this bike. And so the whole idea was to kind of try and follow the recipe that happened with Baker Tweet, do something that maybe was a bit noteworthy, and it worked. And then the first call we got was actually from Conan O'Brien's people, who were just launching his new show on TBS. And they said, we love what you did with the bike. Can you do it for a blimp? And so the first project was creating this AI thing, the same thing we did for the bike, but like an actual real blimp that was flying around the country with Conan's name on the side of it. And it did a similar-ish thing. At the time, it was using Foursquare, and it was checking into places, and it was, I don't know, it was a whole funny thing. But so I was giving AI to a blimp was for Conan O'Brien.
So that blimp project for Conan O'Brien was the first paid gig.
I think, that was it.
Wow.
It's kind of funny. Yeah.
So between starting this studio, by the way, one thing that I meant to ask was, why BREAFAST? Where does the name come from?
Yeah, that's usually the first question. So I don't remember anyone's name, either person or company or anything. This has always been like, it's just something wrong with my brain. Like I just can't remember it. So I wanted to pick a name, a name that you say once and you just get it. And then the way I got to BREAFAST was, at the time I was learning all these electronics and industrial design and mechanical engineering. And the whole goal was to fail fast, to learn as fast as we could, because we had to make some money. And so the whole idea was like, break things very quickly to learn. So break fast, BREAFAST. That makes sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
So, yeah. It was all about, cutting into this new world.
So I guess, the famous Silicon Valley, Facebook.
I know that happened a year after, and I've never been able to disconnect the two. So once Facebook came out with that, I was like, oh God, explaining the name is gonna have that riddled with it.
Yeah.
But it's same mentality, same
the
idea.
Spirit of it, and very simple, very simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, were you able to? The reason why I'm asking about this career transition these questions is, I think in different ways, and perhaps different generation. Now, a lot of people are thinking about whether in their 30s, or I would say 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I interact with people in different age brackets in different contexts. So I teach at a university, a graduate course. So I see these quote unquote kids or young people going into the workforce. Yeah. And in 2025, a lot of students, grads, are not having an easy time getting a job. Yeah. So that's happening among the people in their 20s. And then 20 years senior to that, 40s or even late 40s and early 50s, perhaps in people who are closer to our age, unless they have their thing, you have your thing and I have my own thing, that I think I see a lot of people having either existential challenges and I might even say crises in terms of what they want to do for the next, not just the next 1, 2, 3 years, but 5, 10, if not the rest of their career. Yeah. So when you were, this is 10 to 15 years ago, but when you are making that transition, what did you have any worries? Was it scary? Was it scary? And what kept you going?
It's terrifying. Yeah. I mean, there were many nights of walking my dog on the sidewalk, just sitting there looking up, not knowing if there's some entity somewhere that you just start talking to and you're just like, please don't let this fall apart. Please I need something to keep it going. It's absolutely terrifying. And I think I think I've always been of the mindset that you make your own luck, right? And maybe this comes back to I will work hours and hours to kind of make things happen that I don't think would happen otherwise. But I think I don't know if I'm jumping too far to advice, but essentially in my mind, it was always about not wanting to do anything that anyone else is doing. It's finding that weird little, just how do you turn, even 5 degrees that way and just be doing something that no one else is doing. I mean, to be honest, the part of the reason I started going down this hardware route is because, we were involved in the web in the early days, and it felt you felt like a bit of a rebel, like everyone else. Tons of people didn't get it. It was kind of fun. You'd sell a website to a massive brand, and the brand didn't really know why they needed a website, right? And so you could kind of get away with murder in some ways because they didn't know what they needed, and you were just I just want to do cool shit. And I saw that going away. I saw okay, now this is becoming a profession. This is becoming something where all the clients are now telling us what to do and this and that. And so for me, it was all right, how do I get into fresh territory that brings me back to that thing where people are I don't understand what you do, but I like it. So just do your thing. So in some regards, I guess what I'm getting at is I kind of always tell people, because I get this question a lot of what's, what would you do if you had to pivot or anything? And for me, it's it's just taking all the skills you have and then adding something totally different to it is my mind. It's just combining two things. And so whenever I kind of hit a wall or feel having an existential crisis, can I just keep, if you just stay on this one path, it feels like every path will dwindle eventually. You can only squeeze so much out of the sponge. And so for me, what I always try to do is then look can I combine biology? Is that the next step? Am I okay, what if I start, can I make organic stuff be connected to my, like, I don't know. These are the thoughts I have, is like just going really left field. Because I know if I did that, if all of a sudden I came out with an artwork that had like a beating heart, literally connected to a bunch of things, like, I know that's going to get a bunch of attention. And it's just a matter of, that might sound kind of extreme, but I think where I'm going is just like, I think oftentimes people are just sort of looking down the obvious path. And it's like, if you just take all the skills you have and can combine it with something that's a little bit out there, a different industry that maybe you have to learn a little bit. I think to me, that's the, I don't know, maybe that's the life preserver or opening a new door or something of that sort. But I don't know if that was an answer to your question, really.
No.
I tend to ramble down new paths.
That's okay. Yeah. You mentioned that after you started BREAFAST, so the first several years, was it purely or mostly client paid work?
It was, I would say literally back and forth. So it would be kind of a client paid project. Oftentimes it was sort of a brand, trying to get that brand, kind of what I was just saying. Like, a lot of times brands would reach out and say, like, we don't really even know what to ask you, but we like what you're doing, and here's what we have going on. So we'd knock out some sort of crazy thing, and then I would take that money and do something on my own terms with it. And sometimes there was a product, sometimes it was just a random idea or just a little experiment, or, you know, just these little side projects. And so it would ping pong back and forth. And
then you talked about briefly transitioning to pure art, if I may call it that. Yeah, no, that's what and it then is. So that I want to talk about that transition, or that pivot. And it sounded like you wanted to focus on things that you want to do, and because the things that you were making out of your own desire were the best things that you could make.
Exactly.
Was that the only motivation?
It was that, which I think any creative person can relate to. Like, you know, being able to turn it around where it's like, no, this is, you're reaching out to me for the thing that I'm good at. But then it absolutely was a business decision. You know, what I do is it's such a bad business idea. It's such a bad business model, admittedly, because you're talking about needing extremely talented engineers. So like at this point, the studio is about 17, 18 people. I have engineers that come from like SpaceX and Disney and Rolls-Royce and all these places. You know, they're not cheap employees by any means. Then you're losing anywhere from a quarter to a third to a half, sometimes almost the entire budget just to the hardware. The hardware is so incredibly expensive. And at the end of the day, like, people, you know, you could have $1 million project, and it's not crazy to spend half of that on just the hardware, which, you know, that's a painful, you know, for anyone to be dropping $1 million is a big deal. And then for me to know I only am taking home half of that, and that could be a year-long project, which means like that $500K spread across a studio with a lot of high cost, like, it doesn't really net out very well. So the point of that is, the art world admittedly sound intriguing, because how do I take this piece or this thing I make, and in what world can you attach a price tag to it that might seem, you know, is a big number, but isn't looked at like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. It can make sense, you know. A painting it makes sense that a painting can cost $1 million or whatnot. So it was really that. It was like, because if I sold these as products, or if I sold them as design objects, even, they just wouldn't. The studio would fall apart. It wouldn't be able to make enough cash. So so it's been a balance of it was very much a financial decision as well.
Yeah. So switching gears to that part of the conversation, where I'm interested in uncovering the business of creativity or business of art. And in your case, as you mentioned, it's you as an artist, but also your company or your team as an artist collective, if you will. And as you touched upon a little bit, they are employees that you are hiring and paying a good amount of money to each, because each one of these people is very highly skilled individual. They're not just anybody, right?
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. And then the other part of it is like the value that attach to your art, which can be, to your point, subjective. Mm-hmm. And if you say it's $500,000, it may be $500,000, but you know what? It's actually, $2.5 million because I'm the only one, or we're the only ones who can make this in the world. So do you, and I would imagine some of the work that you do is commissioned by museums and organizations, and some of the work you do on your own. But mm-hmm. again, if you look at, say, like in a year, you kind of have to project as a business owner, you kind of have to project how much money you're making and how much money you're paying. Yeah. Yeah. And I know I'm asking a pretty complex question in a simplistic way, but how do you budget plan your business?
Yeah. So one thing, when I started down the art route, one of the other decisions that was made was, I don't know if you remember my thread screen. I don't know if you remember this.
Oh,
thing,
yeah,
right?
I remember. Yeah, really well, actually. Yeah.
So it was, for those listening, it was a 6,400 mechanical spools of thread that could change color, and anyone at the time, anyone could hashtag an Instagram and it would make their image that they hashtagged mm-hmm. out of this thread. That thing was a disaster. In that it was a perfect example of, it was a great idea. It worked. It ran for a week, but we built it. We put in so much time and engineering into it, but the budget wasn't big enough to build it in a way that it would last. And so I made a decision at that point. Okay, moving forward, the goal is to engineer mediums. So I have my flip discs, for example. I have my bricks that rotate. So essentially it's like technological mediums that we can perfect. So we can put a year, 2 years, 3 years of engineering time into them, perfect that, and then I can create various artworks out of them. Yeah. So there is an efficiency there of kind of creating these underlying technical infrastructure things to make more pieces. To kind of get more to the core of your question, what it looks like now is, actually, during COVID, I started, or just before COVID, which worked out well, I started making smaller artworks for collectors. So, 3 foot by 3 foot pieces. Yeah. So the goal now is to try and sell anywhere between 30 and 50 of those a year, which is quite a lot. I mean, it's not unusual to be selling, one a week, and sending one out, which is a lot of work. Yeah. And those are all done as additions or unique pieces. So that's kind of one revenue stream. And then on top of that is so then I would say then there is kind of the larger commission pieces, which these go into lobbies or museums or whatnot. Yeah. And those are using these mediums that already exist. So they might take 4 to 6 months to produce, but there isn't a lot of engineering there because we've already perfected the underlying engineering. So it's more of getting the team to just do the production and build and assembly. Yeah. So that's kind of the second layer. And then the third layer is the really big, completely custom, multi-year pieces that can go on. And a good example of that is if you saw my Pearl. Did you see this crazy thing?
Which one?
This is the Pearl, which is this giant sphere that's on the cruise ship. So it's on a cruise ship. Yeah. I mean, that thing took 4 years of our time. It was a mess. I mean, the thing has 9,000 motors moving 24 hours a day in the middle of the ocean. So like that's kind of, so you have, that's on the, upper end of the spectrum for sure. We're not doing a lot of those pieces, but in between that. So there's kind of these 3 layers, I'd say, and so the goal is to kind of land, X number of the small, sell a certain number of the collector size pieces, then these sort of mid-tier ones, and then these sort of larger, more custom ones.
Yeah.
But,
The term that you used, mediums.
yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say a medium,
yeah.
and knowing your work a little bit, at least from the outside, instead of me trying to explain it,
sure.
Can you explain what you mean by a medium?
Yeah. So, the best way I could describe it is it's really, well, I'll go through a few of them. So one is, flip disks or flip dots that some people might know. They were invented in the 60s. But essentially I started messing with them 14 years ago. And since they were very antiquated, they don't move very well or very fast. And so for the last decade or so, we've been perfecting those. So that is a medium. So I make many different pieces out of these discs that flip, and I do a lot of creative things with them. Then I have what I call these brixels, is our internal term, which are these bricks, often metal, sometimes they're stone or marble, these two-sided bricks that we can rotate and have really accurate control. And so we'll create big arrays of them to create pieces out of them. I have, a piece in Vegas like that, a piece in Japan as well. I don't know, I probably have about 10 or 15 of those around the world. So that's a medium, which really just means rotating a thing. So we have perfected the ability to take something that's quite heavy and rotate it really accurately, make it interactive. So that's another medium. I have another one called reeds, which are these long, elongated poles, for lack of a better term, that can kind of pivot at the bottom. So you can kind of think of it as like mechanisms. So I can now take a long, skinny thing and wag it back and forth, which sounds really simple, right? It sounds like, oh, you just take a motor and do that. But when you look at the whole software infrastructure, the whole wiring infrastructure, making sure that the motors are silent, making sure they can withstand certain weights. So, it takes years to perfect that. And then what I attach to that mechanism, that medium, can change. So I can make the aesthetics drastically different, but all of that underlying technical infrastructure, we spent a long time perfecting. And so we call them mediums. So I probably have about seven or eight of them at this point.
I see. Yeah. Do you ever mix these mediums in a single piece?
I haven't.
They haven't?
Yeah, no. I have. There's a lot of overlap between some of them in terms of them technically. But up to this point, I haven't brought multiples together. They tend to be, there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it is just efficiency. It's common for me to have multiple pieces near each other and kind of in the same space, like they use different mediums, but I haven't really squashed them together into a single piece.
And also I would imagine technically too, they're different. So it may be difficult to mix them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I hate to say, like I said, these things are very costly to begin with. And so that would introduce more complexity and more cost, where as opposed to, since most of my work are arrays of kinetic elements, the preferred approach is often, let's just add more kinetic elements, like essentially more resolution or make the piece larger is likely the better option than to kind of start mixing other ones into it.
Yeah. So that was part one of my conversation with Andrew Zolty, professionally known as BREAFAST, a data and kinetic artist with his studio in Brooklyn, New York. As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I've known Zolty, and actually I've known him as Zolty, not as BREAFAST, for close to 20 years, but never had a chance to dig deep into how he transitioned from being a marketing creative / developer to a fine artist. It's something that I was always curious about as an individual who has been passionate about the art world since my teenage years. I hope you got a glimpse into what work is like for an artist and what it takes to quote unquote make it in the world. In part two of this conversation, we talk more about his work as an artist and importantly, his tangible advice for anyone who's interested in pursuing a creative life. If you are listening to this on Spotify, there's a Q&A field, so please do send us your questions and comments. And if you like our podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. We'll be so grateful. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with breakfast as much as I did. I'm Ray Namoto, and this is The Creative Mindset. See you next time.